I want to talk to you guys about mommyless men, motherless men, men who either have a not so good relationship with their mother or they do not have a relationship with their mother. What can you expect when dating a motherless or mommyless man? And I know this goes both ways because we're going to do a whole nother episode on women and their fathers, but tonight we're going to talk about the brothers, the men, and what you can expect from a man who does not necessarily have the greatest relationship with his mother. And I've come to these conclusions and I've learned these things from my male friends, just watching them interact with women and seeing the things that they're great at because of this and the things that they struggle with because of this. What I've noticed is when a man has not had a great or the greatest relationship with his mother, or perhaps he has not had his mother at all in his life, he struggles with the understanding of what true and real authentic femininity is and what true and real love is that comes from a woman. Why? Because he has not experienced it. This is not necessarily a terrible thing. It's just a setback. Just similar, like I'm saying, women and their fathers, It's a setback that can potentially cause problems in the relationships that they have with women if they do not address these things within themselves. And so what I've noticed in my closest friends, male friends that is that they tend to be what other men would consider a little less masculine in the way that with their emotions. They don't like to show their emotions because they don't want to be hurt. So they struggle in the area of being vulnerable with their emotions. Now, some men may look at this as a masculine trait. However, it's actually a very feminine trait. Not being able to show up and show your emotions. The reason it is something that is feminine is because a feminine woman, oftentimes women are full of emotion, but in the wrong way. They don't express the emotion outwardly the way it is natural to them. And they have to be taught to be emotionally mature. And so when men struggle with their identity, with being too vulnerable or maybe saying I love you too much or being too emotional, affectionate, and they struggle with showing the feminine side of them, that is them struggling with that internally, that feminine side of them internally, and learning to balance that out. I've said many times before, all of us are made up of masculine and feminine energy. And so when a man lacks the relationship with his mother, he also lacks the balance within him on on his feminine side of him. He lacks the balance in knowing how and when to show up in an emotional state. You know what I'm saying? When to cry, when to show vulnerability, when to show his emotions and stand strong in that and not look at that as a weakness. There's a balance that needs to be had within that man. And he lacks that balance because he did not receive it growing up. He did not receive the proper love from a mother. And some people will say, oh, well, I got it from my aunt. I got it from my cousins. I got it from other women. And this is typically why these men will take longer to develop in relationships in emotional maturity, because they're learning what they should have learned as a child through interacting with women. They're learning how to balance their emotional state or their feminine side. And I don't even like to say feminine side because people get offended by that. But we all have masculine and feminine energies within us. It helps us to be balanced and whole. And so you can't be afraid of that. You can't shy away from that. And you shouldn't look down on that. And so what I'm trying to say is that he's learning to balance that energy out by his interaction with women, which is taking a longer time for him to get there. This is very similar to the women and the fatherless women. You know, it takes those women a long time sometimes to get to the understanding of what a man really needs from her. This is the same thing for a man that is a motherless, than it is a motherless man or a mommyless, man. He struggles with understanding what a female needs from him in order for the connection to be balanced. And you'll oftentimes see these type of men struggle with communication when it comes to showing their emotions. Like I'm saying, they're too masculine, or they come off too hard. They come off like they don't care. They find themselves losing connections with women because they do not know how to show up in those ways. They also will find that these men will run into connections where there's a constant battle of who's in charge. Why? Because they are emotionally immature. And so if you connect with a woman who's emotionally immature as well, now it's almost like it's a relationship between two women instead of a man and a woman. And that woman is unbalanced with her masculine energy from her father, so she does not know how to show up emotionally in the connection. And then the man is unbalanced from the lack of balance from his feminine side that he receives from his mother growing up. And so you have two people that are emotionally immature trying to communicate, which will never work. So it ends a lot of times in arguments. It ends in a struggle for control. It ends in, pettiness. It ends with just all the things that come with an emotional, unbalanced person. This is not to talk down about men or women. It's just something that we don't talk about, that we need to correct in order to going forward having better relationships with women. These type of men who have, like I'm saying, not so good relationship with their mothers, they have to go heal that. If you don't heal that connection, and I'm not saying you have to necessarily heal it with your mother directly, but you have to go in and heal it within yourself. Figure out what it is that you need. For some men, for instance, they may have missed out on, the praise that the mother naturally gives. Some other men may have lost out on the whole mothering and a whole. A mother is going to be a person that will probably see things that you need before you do. She may know you deeper than you know yourself. And so if you see where I'm going with this, when a man who has not had a healthy relationship with his mother encounters a woman who is emotionally mature, who knows naturally how to be in her feminine energy, he will have a hard time accepting her love. It's not that he won't want her love or he won't desire her love, but it may, cause fear to come in, to creep in, because he's never experienced that. And so he may look at her like, oh, she trying to play me. Or, she may look at, to him like something that's all wrong, because if you've experienced one thing most of your life, then something comes along that's very different, we tend to peg it as something that's wrong or negative, when in fact it may be the very thing that we need in our lives. However, these men will encounter this woman and push her away in a lot of ways because she's making him too vulnerable. She's making him, she makes him see and feel things that he's never felt before. He's afraid of being that vulnerable because what if this woman goes and he loves her to death? He put his all into it and she goes and turns her back. And this stems from the motherless syndrome that I'm speaking of, because when that mother is not showing up as her natural essence as being a mother, her child is not only lacking her presence, but the child, or the male child, is also lacking his ability to understand his emotional state. This goes the same. You can have a mother in your life, and if she is emotionally unstable, it will also affect the man in his emotional state going forward. And so the mother not being in a man's life definitely affects his relationship with his daughters. It's going to affect his relationship with women that he date, and any women in his family, friends, any of that, because he has to know and understand where his emotional state comes from. And so in understanding that, he'll start to understand himself more. He'll understand where and why women do certain things that they do, why women respond certain ways that they respond. And it won't be looked at from a negative standpoint because he'll understand it in himself. But if you haven't had that example, then it'll be very hard for you to, like I'm saying, when you run into a woman who is mature emotionally, who does love more naturally, and she is in her natural energy and natural state as a woman, you're going to run that woman away. You're going to run her away because you're going to be coming off as an unbalanced and emotionally immature person. You would not know how to communicate with her. You would not know how to love her because you haven't experienced that level of love yet, which affects everything. And so it's important for the man to be able to pinpoint these things in himself, even if he never tells anyone. If you see this in yourself, you know if you've had a crappy relationship with your mother. And if you have, you probably agree with me that there are some things that have caused you to sometimes look at a woman with a very negative eye because of the lack of having your own mother and that nurturing mothering in the woman. For instance, you may feel that women are no good, because what also another side effect of a motherless father is the abandonment syndrome, feeling abandoned, feeling played, feeling like your feelings were taken for granted. Because not saying that the love of a father is any less than the love of a mother, but for a man, your mother is the other part of you that completes you. She teaches you the things that you do not naturally have. I'm saying you have them, but she helps you cultivate those things. Same for a woman and her father. He cultivates things in her that she would not naturally get from a woman. And so when you don't have that relationship with your mother, I believe it affects a man on a very deep level, and it definitely shows up in his relationships. Not only his relationship with himself, but his relationship outside of him, with women, with his daughters, you know, all of those things.